Hi, I'm Bill Conger, Chief Curator at the Peoria Riverfront Museum. I'd like to welcome you to this amazing exhibition called Solitude, which has been made possible by the Art Bridges Foundation. And in this exhibition, we are using primarily the works from Art Bridges' sister museum, Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. And this exhibition has been sponsored generously by the Bielefeld Foundation, the Visionary Society, Friends of Art, and the Illinois Arts Council. As we move into the larger gallery, you will see a number of works in our permanent collection, but an amazing monumental work by the conceptual California-based artist John Baldessari. And this piece is called Beethoven's Trumpet with Ear, opus number 132. And it is a remarkable sculpture, this incredibly fashioned ear, which kind of melds and merges into the wall, and structurally and sculpturally is married to the wall, and also kind of defying gravity, this amazing ear trumpet emerges. And the ear trumpet is something that was part of actual history. We know that Beethoven was deaf and used a number of these, which in their day would have been a high level of technology, actually. These actually helped filter distinct sounds to Beethoven's ears. And upon seeing a number of these trumpets in the Beethoven home, Baldessari fashioned a conceptual work in which the ear is presented. The ear is whose? We're not exactly sure if it's Beethoven's or is it ours. What we do know is that the viewer is invited to be a part of the sculpture. So as this piece says here, speak inside, and what is returned to you in very, 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 very muted sound is opus 132. You have to really strain to hear it. It's a very beautiful and poetic work that is very loud upon, visually loud, but really requires a solitude and a silence to really enjoy it. Kind of pinioned against the great Baldessari work is another artist, American artist of really amazing following, Helen Frankenthaler, who is one of the second generation abstract expressionist painters, the New York school. She, of course, being a female in the 1960s, 50s, broke a number of ceilings very early on in the mid-20th century in a very male-based art world and particularly art movement. But this piece, which is a screen print, is called Contentment Island. And Contentment Island was one of Helen's homes. She had a home, and this island is off of the coast of Connecticut, just north of New York. And this was her place of removal, of peacefulness, of kind of sanctity. And she painted it a number of times and used it in her work. And this beautifully orchestrated abstract work in primarily aquas and blues and greens brings us to this place almost in a murky way. We're submersed into the water itself. And we get that solitude, that silence, that calm that I think she must have been experiencing while living on the island. From an island to more familiar forested and mountainous regions, we have Thomas Moran's incredible painting called The Valley of the Catawissa in Autumn. And as we already know, Thomas Moran was one of the fathers of the Hudson River School. And this group of painters really began the idea of America becoming an art-oriented art force. They are turning to the very land that we are exploring, frontiering, becoming at one with, and formulating an identity with. So what happens here, this actual valley was inhabited at the time of the painting by a railroad, which went through the Catawissa Valley. And Moran removes the railroad out in order to give us a more pure idea of the landscape. So why is he doing this? We know that the Hudson River painters really set the tone for what become our national park systems. The very view that you're seeing here would not have been necessarily hard to find. This was not a reproduced view in terms of art until this group of artists come and declare that America is worth painting. And this becomes some of the earliest fodder for an extremely important art movement that literally puts America on the map. Along with the various landscapes, such as Thomas Moran's, we do have a different version of landscape here with Neil Welliver, who I was really surprised and happy to find in this grouping that we were allowed to pick from for this exhibition. Welliver spent almost his entire career in Maine and secluded himself away from the hustle and bustle of New York City and created these really beautiful and mostly square formatted paintings, really as large as you would imagine a Rococo or Baroque painting of 200 years prior to Neil Welliver. He's immersing us into the landscape. It's not enough for him to depict it. He wants you in it. And this remarkable painting, in unison with these incredible little hash marks that mimic kind of a frosty, snowy moment, walking around the woods, encountering a creek, we feel actually cold when we look at this. It really brings temperature and time and place and marries it to our experience. An unusual piece, but a fascinating piece in Solitude, is Bo Bartlett's The Lobster Wars. Bartlett has set up a beautiful composition in kind of a murky, almost dreamlike series of tones, of hues. We have muted pinks and blues, almost blanched by light or something else. To me, it kind of connotates the idea of memory or dream-like sequence, but we have this amazing figure as the subject of our painting, who is, with his cap turned up, ironically the way it is, mimics almost like Viking horns. His apron is completely soaked with blood, although lobsters don't bleed. So we're already just in understanding the man, the foremost figure in the painting, we already are confronted with some questions that we are going to struggle to answer. We have a Jolly Roger on his sail, and we have a gentleman here that looks like maybe he's more of a frontierist than a fisherman. The pole in his hand resembles almost a musket or a gun. So there is something going on here. They're preparing for something very serious. In the distance, we can see smoke, almost in a fashion of the remnants of some battle or some type of emergency call out. But what is being poised here is the beginning of something very physical is about to happen. And we think perhaps the idea of territories with fishermen and their particular areas and the ideas of ownership over the ocean may have something to do with this painting. But completely enigmatic and curious and cryptic, and just a beautiful painting. We have Grant Wood here from Iowa, one of the regionalist painters of the Midwest. Grant Wood's contribution to Solitude is this portrait of a Michigan banker. And this banker commissioned this painting. So this was actually a planned piece, which I find very intriguing. And it brings an air of mystery to the type of symbolism that only Grant Wood can achieve. I find most striking the use of the golf club, which clearly was important to this man. As he is painted almost mid-swing or just post-swing, his eyes gaze forward, but we're not sure if his eyes are on the strike or if they're going off farther, if they're somewhere else. And he, of course, is clothed in his business uniform, his suit and tie. We do have above his very stately home, which he makes sure that we sees a man of some level of success, this beautiful oak leaf painted with an empty acorn cap, probably symbolizing the beginning of the winter, symbolically the winter of life. But it's a beautiful composition that asks more questions than it answers. And lastly, we have the great American painter from the Ashcan School, George Bellows. This incredible work, called Return of the Useless, depicts Belgian people being returned from work camps post-World War I. They're emaciated, they're terrified, they've been starved, and they're further beaten upon being removed from this rail car. What we have, though, in the center of the painting is this beautifully radiant female who does not have the same look of fright and terror as her counterparts, but almost anger as she glares at the abusive uniformed military here. And her gesture is really something out of Renaissance painting, but her emergence is something very, very important, and we get the sense that something is about to happen, something miraculous is about to change, or at least that is what the viewer anticipates. Thank you for being on this tour of Solitude, the Necessity of Art. I'd like to thank a couple more people, Andrew Muir and Jeff and John Heinzman, who lent us a number of objects included in Solitude. I'd like to thank all our sponsors, and I'd like to thank you for being with me.